Back when I was younger, I worked at a clothing store for a few years. I had one other job in retail before this, but it didn't last that long as it was only over a summer. So this clothing store was pretty large and popular, and there were many different areas inside of it. When I first got the job, I was working in the back half of the store most of the time in that department. I would do all kinds of tasks, organizing, bringing out more inventory from the back, and things like that. I never worked as a cashier, which I was happy about, because I didn't like that. So one night, when I was still pretty new to the job, I was working and it was later at night. Things were really quiet, and we closed in about an hour or two. It was a nice time for me because the store would be nearly empty, so I could get lots of stuff done. When it was busier, I would always have to look out for customers to not get in their way, and sometimes help them as well. As I was working back there, I saw a man walk into that section. I remember that he was kind of looking around at clothes, but it seemed more like he was just kind of looking around in general. Now, I wasn't staring at him or trying to just watch him, but he was in my line of vision as I worked. I was kind of shy back then, and that is why I didn't like to be a cashier. So I didn't have the thought to go up to the guy and ask if he needed help. But I remember that he was just kind of standing around for at least 10 minutes. He didn't move much, and was not necessarily looking at clothes, but just kind of observing the area. Eventually, though, the man turned and walked away. I really thought nothing of it, and maybe it was nothing. But anyways, I continued to work. There were not a lot of others working that night. It was probably me and about 5 other people in that moment. I was really the only person in that particular area. Maybe 15 minutes later, I went into the back room area over there. Like many stores, we had a back room area with extra inventory where it would be before it hit the sales floor. It was cluttered back there with boxes, shelves, and all kinds of stuff. There were also a few doors that led to outside, spaced out here and there. I remember that I went back there to get something, and when I was in the back room, I heard somebody knocking at one of the doors from outside. They were practically banging on the door. This was really weird because that door was rarely, if ever, used. I don't think it was an emergency door, but it just led to this back street behind the store. It was never used other than for deliveries. It was a small access road, and behind it was really nothing else. There was another door a ways down where deliveries would come in. I thought that it had to be either a coworker who for some reason went outside and got locked out, or else we were getting a delivery, and the person just went to the wrong door for some reason. But both of those scenarios seemed unlikely to me. I was the only person in the back at that moment, and whoever was outside the door was relentlessly banging on it. I thought about going to answer it, but still being new to the job and stuff, I decided to find a coworker first. So instead of opening the door, I walked out of the back room and back onto the sales floor again. I walked around until I found a coworker. When I did, I told her about the banging on the door. She had no idea who it would be, and like me, did not think that we were getting any kind of a delivery. She suggested that we go outside from the front and go around to see who was there. I agreed to it. The store was very quiet, with basically nobody there, so we didn't have a ton to do in the moment. We left the store through the front and then started walking around the building. Behind the building, like I said, was just a narrow sort of alleyway that was only really used for deliveries, and behind that was sort of a wall going up, and then above that was a back area to another store nearby. So when we approached the back, it was very quiet there. I could hear the person when we got closer. When we finally got to the end of the building, we both looked around the corner. Then we saw a dark SUV that was parked near the door. Very quickly, we saw a man run from the door area, jump inside the car, and it drove off in the other direction, leaving very quickly. It seemed really suspicious to both of us. I didn't get a great look at the man at all, but he looked like the guy who had been in the store before, just looking around. My coworker and I both went back inside the store and reported it to our manager. I'm not sure if anything was done, because I went home shortly after and then was off for the night. I never heard anything more about it. Looking back, I'm really glad that I didn't open that door. I think that possibly the man was going to try to rob the store or something like that. One time, a long time ago, I was shopping at a department store. This was way back, probably close to 30 years ago now. I lived in a city that had a nearby shopping area that was pretty popular. There were lots of stores, and many of them had connecting parking lots. That area had very many stores and restaurants, and I would do like 90% of my shopping there. On this night, it was late, and I had gone to the store many times before. It was large, and when I went in there on this night, I was there for over an hour. It was nearly closing time when I left, so I got out to the parking lot and walked to my car. I put everything in my car and then got inside. By that time, I remembered that the parking lot was basically empty, but when I had gotten there, there were way more cars, so I was parked kind of far from the store. Before I left, I looked around and noticed this guy walking in the parking lot. I had no idea where he had come from, but he seemed to kind of emerge from nowhere. There was a massive parking lot because there were a lot of stores close by, and it was practically empty, except for this guy walking in it. The guy was sort of in front of my car, but maybe about 100 feet away. Before leaving, for some reason, I just watched him walk. The guy went to about directly in front of my car, but still like 100 feet away. Then he stopped and faced me. The guy just looked at me and was standing there. It seemed really weird now. I remember that he had sort of long hair and a mustache and was wearing just average clothes. He just stood there looking at me, and for some reason I didn't drive away. I think I was just really curious as to what he was doing. He didn't wave or say anything, and I didn't recognize him. He continued to stand there and face me for like a minute. The guy didn't move or anything, and I was really weirded out by this point, so I just left. I went home and forgot about it. However, sometime later, maybe a week or two, I was shopping at that store again. I remember that I got up to the checkouts to buy what I was getting. There were a few lanes open, and as I was in line, I noticed one of the cashiers. I recognized him and at first didn't know what from. Then it clicked. It was the same guy that I had seen standing in the parking lot and staring at me. I did not know that he worked at the store. This made it seem even more creepy. What he did was so weird, but I guess it made sense as to why he was in the parking lot if he worked there. He hadn't been wearing the store uniform when I had seen him before, though. I was not in that guy's line, thankfully, and I checked out in a different one. Soon after, I left. Fast forward to about a month later. I was talking with one of my neighbors, and I found out that she worked at that same store. I had never seen her there, but she was part-time and was not a cashier. Anyways, when I found out she worked there, I remembered the creepy guy. I asked her if she knew him and described him to her, but didn't tell her about my experience yet. As soon as I mentioned him, she knew exactly who I was talking about. She said that he was creepy and he had been fired from the store. She said that he was always weird to other employees and had tried to follow somebody home once. When I heard that, it made more sense. I told her about seeing him in the parking lot, and she said that he was really weird like that, but it still seemed so creepy. The guy was literally just standing there in the middle of the parking lot staring at me, and it was right in front of his place of work. I wonder if he had seen me in the store before or something, or if it was more of a random thing.